Do you ever look up at a tall mountain and wonder if it's really just a petrified tree? Well, there's a long-standing fringe theory that some isolated mountains, mesas or flat-top formations are actually the fossilized stumps of enormous prehistoric trees. It's called the ancient giant tree theory. First, let's start with the basics of the theory. Then we'll get into the connection to waterfalls. The basic idea is that certain isolated flat-top mountains are not what mainstream geologists say they are. Places like Devil's Tower in Wyoming, for example, are not volcanic plugs as geologists say, but rather the fossilized remains of ancient colossal trees from a prehistoric Earth. Supporters of this idea point to a few pieces of evidence. First, they say the hexagonal columns found in some formations like Devil's Tower and the Giantess Causeway resemble the structure of plant cell fibers or tree vascular bundles. They also note the symmetry and vertical grain patterns which look like giant wood trunks. Finally, they cite the numerous cultural myths of world trees found in Native American, Norse Yggdrasil, and African lore as evidence that these tree-like mountains are actually trees. Mainstream geology, of course, disagrees. The prevailing view is that places like Devil's Tower are igneous intrusions. In this case, phonolite porphyry, magma pushed up from deep within the earth, cooling underground and later exposed by erosion. The tree stump resemblance is simply coincidental according to geologists, but alternative theorists say there's more to these formations than meets the eye. Now let's get to the connection to waterfalls. How could these giant tree mountains create waterfalls? Well, proponents of the theory suggest a few mechanisms. First, they say the root system of these ancient trees could act as vast natural plumbing systems. As rainwater and underground seepage soaked into the roots, it would be directed upwards, feeding springs and seeps along the trunk of the formation. Fractured channels within the petrified wood, much like the grain in petrified wood, could also direct water upward or outward, feeding streams. Finally, over millions of years, erosion could have exposed these channels as cliffs where the water tumbles down, forming waterfalls. This means that many famous falls like those at Yosemite, the Amazon, and Victoria might owe their existence to ancient petrified trees. These act as natural spillways directing water off the edge of the tree stump. If the tree is sitting on a slope, its runoff channels might feed multiple falls at different elevations. To supporters of this idea, it all makes sense. These giant tree stumps would act as natural reservoirs, aquifers, and pipelines, creating the very rivers